Pulled up the wrong thing. Okay, now we're on. Dope. I gotta set up a button for that, but I probably won't. Anyway, welcome to here, people, and also Spoofey, unless you say it differently. Our interviews. It's another one. And what they are is I pick people that I have RP'd with in the last season that I think are amazing, that I think bring something that I don't bring, or have skills that I don't have, or did something that I thought was incredible, and ask them questions to sort of make my own RP better and, you know, think about RP and all of that stuff, the big concepts behind RP. And then also stream it in case someone else wants to know, or just to make it less like me just grilling someone. But so that's what the interview thing is. That's the goal. That's the point. I've done plenty of them so far, but every time is different and every person's unique and all that stuff. So yeah, it's another one. Hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
The first question is almost always the same. However, I did find a funnier question that I would like to ask first, and that is, can I add you on League? Which, yeah.
League of Legends? My account got hacked like years ago. I'd have to like recover it again for like the third time. But yes, you could when I get it. When I get it back.
I check for people who might actually be streamers, because I don't know a lot of the time, and I saw that you had a Twitch at some point that did at some point stream, and that was like one of the main things, add me on League or something, and I thought, this is funny.
Years ago, yeah.
So, okay, moving on beyond that, how'd you get into RP, I guess, from League or wherever you came from?
No, actually, funny story. So I started on a game called Beast of Bermuda, which is a dinosaur simulation game online. And I was a velociraptor in a group of velociraptors. And the group I was rolling with, they were like, we're going to try a new game called Conan. And I was like, what is this Conan? What? And so I bought it with them, and I started out on a server called Heralds of Strife, which isn't around anymore. And I just got thrown into the RP, like legitimately didn't even know how to put my weapons away. Like couldn't hit Z to put my weapons away. So everyone's like, you know, flex, they had map rooms. So they're like, flex your E muscle. And I'm like, what the fuck? E-muscle, like what is this? I didn't know anything. So I got in it from a dinosaur game. I just rolled in with like a group of people.
Dope. And so I've never heard of that server, but I'm pretty sure one or two other people that I interviewed this time said that server. Was that a long time ago, or?
Oh, maybe a year and a half ago, I would say. Okay. Yeah.
That's dope.
I was only there for like 3 weeks before the season ended, and then the server shut down.
So do you have any RP beyond that onto other games?
No, not really. I was literally just thrown right into it. I mean, I grew up with two brothers, so I was made to play D&D tabletop and that nonsense. Like when I was 9 years old, but my RP efficiency when I was 9 probably wasn't very good. So yeah, no, just last year and a half, just getting thrown right into a serious server like that.
9 years old sounds young for RP, I will admit.
I was forced, it's fine.
But this is actually something that I didn't have to cover this time. But since we're here, do you think, definitely not Conan, 100% not Conan, but in other games, do you think that having RP with young adults or even young or old children, you know, somewhere in there, is fine and acceptable and stuff?
Not Conan.
Not Conan, no.
I think role play is a great outlet for creativity and imagination, which I think can be great for children. Being in a fantasy world, like I grew up on Ultima and EverQuest. I remember playing on my brother's accounts and having my own character and being able to like level up. And I didn't really talk to anybody, but having that fantasy world really, I think, propelled my creativity and just my imagination. I think that's really important for a kid, young adults especially. And when it comes to as you're role playing, when you get to an acceptable age to role play and an acceptable, place for your age appropriateness, not Conan when you're like 14, not a good idea. But I think that it helps with social skills, communicating and empathy and understanding where other people are coming from. Do I personally want to see like youngins in the Conan community? No, I think it's definitely an 18 plus community, like you were saying, like not Conan, but in other games. I know I have a daughter and she plays Roblox and she does like family oriented, like, oh, I get a kid kind of thing, and I don't know. So
Just because it's fun to tell people that don't know, there is also RP in Fortnite, for the record. There's servers dedicated and built specifically for RP in Fortnite, which blows my mind every time I say it, but there you go. But you did mention creativity and sort of the artistic side of RP. So how do you come to your characters? How do you create them, make them who they are?
So for the longest time, because I'm not the most experienced in RP, so for the longest time it was very much like fly by the seat of my pants, like create a character on a whim, like with just a basic idea, and then just see how the world shapes them. Recently, most recently, like with Keily and then my next character, I actually have written a little bit of a backstory, more so my character dynamic with like my boyfriend, in how our characters will interact. And that kind of gives us a basis of history, about the character and how they'll interact with other characters that they're involved with that they know. But I don't really go in like established, like, this is me. I like to create characters that are based on flaws. Like Keely didn't like magic starting off. She was human. She couldn't do anything special. She was very, very average in everything she did. And the world and the people around her shaped her into something great, which was amazing for me.
Yes, we didn't know when all of us, like my little group or whatever, not that we started together, but we didn't know, how long the server had gone on and stuff like that. So when I started, everybody was talking about the research place and the place next to Clearshore and the doctor and all of that stuff. Like, I thought that it was part of the story on purpose, I guess. And I thought that the server story that I had never seen that either. So I thought that was the point, and then you left and swapped characters, and I was like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. So sort of, I guess, how did Keely wind up being so important?
I don't. Wow, that's a good question. So I guess it was some random events. I really like writing as a person, and I was afforded a very unique opportunity where I reached out to the admins through a support ticket for RP support, and I was like, hey, my group's a Monster Hunter group. This is our background. What if we involve some other people, like got a small group of people? Because I wanted to bring RP to multiple people. And what if we tried to capture one of these Deathclaw, and I could do an autopsy, because she's a doctor of mundane medicine, and then talk about what we might find. And luckily the admins were all for that. Like, they thought it was a great idea. We got the original, as we say, Cloak members, together for Project Cloak, and did the first abduction, which is one of the first screenshots you have there, where Payne played the Deathclaw scout that we abducted, and I performed an autopsy on, and I wrote my first report. And I from then on, like people come to be like, what kind of samples do you need? What do you need? And I'd be like, oh, bring me a liver, And then I was afforded again the great opportunity to get a support ticket and ask the admins, like, hey, like, someone wanted to do this quest for a liver. Like, should I find anything? And if I do, what would I find? And I have a bit of a medical background, so Payne kind of gave me the go ahead of writing reports and then getting them approved through him on what his ideas would be. And I was very lucky, and I think that really propelled Keily in the sense of Hunter Song became the information hub, an RP hub, because we were able to. I limited her RP so I could give out RP to others.
And I talked to Payne yesterday, and one of the things that I talked to him about and asked him about was these like server or admin promotions of stories. It's something that I see in Conan that I don't see in a lot of other games that I have tried to RP on, in which the admin is totally willing to make items, make scenes, make whatever for Conan, I guess because they have the power and the mods and all the stuff behind it. So I guess there's probably a lot of people who would never even ask, hey, can I do this or whatever. Do you have any thoughts or tips behind those of us who don't know how to do that stuff, don't know what to ask for, to sort of get involved?
I have bad anxiety, and I know when I first opened like a ticket, I was like going in, looking at the rules, and it said, RP support. So I was like, okay, this would be RP support, I guess. Here's my idea. So I went in with an idea. I didn't just go in going, hey, I want to do something cool. Do you have any ideas for my character? I went in with an actual objective, and I prepared myself for them to say no, because on previous servers that was kind of the experience that I've had. And again, I was afforded a very good opportunity where, I actually did real research and learned, like, when I did a heart, I guess the heart sample, I did research on both a bird and crocodile heart and combined them and wrote like a real research paper. So I guess my advice is put in the work. And if you show that you're going to put in the work, 100%, they're going to work with you. Like, if you have a good idea and, they feel that it fits with the story, but also be prepared and okay for them to say no to things. Because that's fair too.
I also put in a ticket, and I was like, hey, does anyone on the team want to do an interview? And like multiple times in it, I was like, it's cool if you don't, I don't normally ask admin teams. Like, I understand you don't want to maybe divulge secrets or whatever. So I was the same exact way. But what Hidalgo said, and the reason I included this first picture, not because there's a Deathclaw in it, but when Barry first went to Hunter Song, I've encountered people doing medical RP in the past, and sometimes it's very light and it's very, band-aids or whatever, that sort of thing, and sometimes it's off the wall, and it's things like STDs or whatever, and like it's just a joke, like, haha, you got this, or boils or whatever. But when I went to Hunter Song, I think I was alone or never ran into someone or whatever, but I remember standing in it and looking around, and there's that clean suit, and I was like, what is this like weird mannequin? And then I just stood there and thought about it, and I was like, oh, that's the clothes you change into in order to have clean, like, whatever. And I thought, okay, there's a point where someone thought this all the way through. And the more you stand there and look around, and also in the research center, it's clear that you just thought things through all the way. And that's amazing, like that amount of thought and realism, I think, is great. But those are the only two buildings I went into.
Well, those are the only two that were open. But
Right.
the clinic itself is the one I built. Well, we built everything, but I didn't decorate the research center. That was Valnoria Light Nevea. But when it came to the clinic, I'm a vet tech in real life. I did that for 13 years. So um, actually, I think we had an interaction where you were with Amy and she brought in a pug. And I was like, this is my job. Like,
Yep.
but I made the clinic to resemble a real like clinic where you have the waiting area, reception area, and then you have, the treatment area. And then I even had a back office where I kept all my samples from death calls. I had like 58 hearts by then at the end. All the samples that I would have gotten from players, as well as like notes. There's actually like real readable notes on the desk that you could read if you ever got back in there. But yeah, I tried to make it as realistic as possible with the clothes. And if you notice, Keely always washed her hands before and after. Like I was very, and she would like burn her clothes after, and then set up a new mannequin. So.
So yeah, like I even had a comment to Lelina, I'm pretty sure, or someone, about like how realistic the pug thing was. I thought that was super funny. And all of those little things that are scattered around everywhere, like that's a scene that someone can walk into alone, look at, and go, oh, this is real. Like, I believe it. It's a scene. But also, there are a lot of people who only have 2 hours, 3 days a week to RP. Do you have any thoughts about how those people, who may have never done the sort of thing that you have there with the medical place and all the different details, do you have any thoughts or tips for people to sort of make that scene, but maybe they feel like they don't have time?
You mean in playing a certain like niche kind of thing?
Well, yeah, but even the vampires that I ran into when I was in their house, they had specific items that it really reflected their characters, not just the stereotype. Or who else did I go into? Like Amy's house, the whole keep was very geared towards her character, just like Hunter Song was geared towards your character. But it would be difficult to do, I guess, without your knowledge. Like you know that stuff. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do those of us who don't know mirror at least some of it, a little bit of it?
A little bit of it. So, do what you know. That was what makes a character so, I feel, organic. Like, a lot of people want to play characters that are very much not like themselves. And I agree to that. I think that playing a character not like yourself removes yourself from, any kind of, I guess, overlapping of feelings when it comes to, I guess you could say, OOC bleed. But also, to make the character feel real and organic, it is an enhancement of things you might know. So if you're, say, really good at writing, just do like a museum, like write about relics, write about things that you can research very easily. It does unfortunately take time to write these things. Like all the books in the research center were written by myself, Sin, and some of the magic books by Light. But those were like real research we did. We didn't just copy and paste from a website, which you could still do, if you want to do that. But we would actually do research and write up this information. And I guess it's just a matter of how much work you want to put in and how real you want your character to feel. So if you want to do the medical aspect, look up some first aid classes. Look up, chest compressions, like how to do that, how to do wound care. I actually looked up, when I was doing the first aid classes, how to do first aid. And I learned the 3 C's off a website. Clean it, coat it, cover it. And like that was my first aid curriculum, and it was research that I did.
The 3Cs. Okay. I was very happy to ruin those for you. But before we get into ruining your RP or, going off the rails, real medicine is very I would say tense. I don't have a ton of interactions in which I personally was involved in, real medicine, hospital visits, and that sort of thing. But when you're there, when you're in those real situations, they're very tense. People are having probably one of the worst days of their life, kind of thing, right? Did you see that in RP as well? And did those sort of things lead to very serious, very dramatic RP?
Absolutely. So one of the first scenes I had was with Mama Salty's character, Sally, who was I think she was a Lycan or Fae at that point. She was a Fae. And it was after one of the bigger battles with the Deathclaw. And it was the first scene where Keily was brought in with the other magical healers. And she was, at the time, as far as I know, the only just average, mundane healer of like, here's a Band-Aid, the only way. And there's a lot of creatures that wanted no magic, like mystical like creatures that would react badly to magic. So what ended up happening is Sally had like basically I don't know how to explain it. Her eye basically exploded in her socket, and that was her major wound. Was her eye socket was bleeding, and I had to like remove the eye, and like it was really intense RP. That was pretty gory, and she ended up dying. Despite my really good, like I rolled for things, I had really good medical rolls, but her rolls just weren't in her court that day, and she ended up dying, and it affected Keely very much. So there can be very intense medical scenes, and then there can be like, my dog is sick, So yeah. I appreciate both scenes. I really do, because they both bring a certain kind of RP aesthetic, I guess, dynamic.
Did that, or I guess, would you consider yourself practiced at dramatic RP and serious forms, or is that your focus even?
I definitely prefer immersion above all else. Even in regards to like free creativity for characters where people are like, I'm half dragon and half unicorn. I'm like, that's great, but like I just want to be immersed in a world that is kind of realistic, in the sense like with Keely, with her medical procedures, there's only so much I could do, right? Because say someone had a collapsed lung, like I was like, yeah, I can stick a tube in between your rib cage and try to inflate your lung, but I didn't have like regular like medical procedures that you have today. So when I did research for the medical procedures, I had to make sure that it was like Renaissance type medical procedures that were applicable to the world. That I didn't just pull out like an EKG machine and be like, clear, So there's only so much I could do as a mundane healer. I don't know if I can.
I mean, yeah. Immersion is, I guess, the answer there, and that's like, I always feel like personally I'm in my character and I'm deep in my character, but I as a person am very drawn to chaos and like just random colors and like all of that stuff. So when I'm deep in my character, it just looks like a bunch of weird junks happening, and I think that's fine, and hopefully other people accept it at least a little bit. But Barry, who did go to the doctor a couple times, I found myself finding reasons to not go, because for two reasons. First off, I am not familiar with the emote system in Conan, the written stuff, the explanation of things. So I definitely needed to practice it more and work on it more than I did. And a lot of the medical stuff, it seems like, you know, you need to describe what's happening and everything through that system. And also, I thought it was realistic that an old man would be sort of against going to the doctor over and over again. Like, it's a hassle, you know, it's that sort of thing. And I even had Barry say multiple times the doctor doesn't like me. I don't need to go and stuff, just to like bring a little conflict, because I felt like for Barry's injuries and Barry's wounds and that sort of thing that were more minor than losing fingers or popping an eyeball or something, you know, just like, oh, my knees hurt or whatever, it felt right. It felt normal to be against going to the doctor.
See, that was good RP for me too. Like the I believe one of the last RP interactions we had where he came to the doctor about that hair growth. Like I had to think on my feet. I was like, what the? How do I deal with this? Like, okay, your hat's obviously maybe rubbing the follicles. You know, I tried to explain that in voice, and I was like, don't wear your hat, maybe a bandana. You know, apply it to the scalp. And, you know, like it kept me on my toes. Even the small interactions with medical RP. It was more, I had less time to look up things and more of what would be common sense. And I guess that's where my medical background came into play, you know. Like, for instance, I know it wasn't human medicine, but if a dog was having a skin infection, you don't, and was itching constantly, you would put like a shirt on it. So it would, you know, stop the itchiness and the rawness of the skin, you know, protect that area and get it to stop doing that. So in a way, that's kind of like what I applied to Barry. I was like, just wear a bandana, so it's not like so constricting, but enough that it's, you know, gonna keep it safe, I guess. So I really enjoyed that. I'm kind of disappointed that you came up with reasons not to visit me, because it was very funny. I was just like, stop ingesting things. And I think that when you say, you know, you weren't used to the emote system, that's how you get used to it. And a good medical RPer will be like, you know, I look to see what's going on with this particular area. What do I find? And they'll prompt you through their emotes to kind of prompt what you might respond with. Like, for instance, when Keily would do a physical exam, she'd be like, I'm going to hold candlelight to your eyes to see if your pupils dilate or don't dilate, or if there's any reaction to the light, you know, that kind of thing. And that would prompt people to be like, do I have problems with my eyes? Like, is my eyesight going? Is that something that I want for my character for medical RP reasons? So I think a good medical RPer will help guide you through those emotes, and you shouldn't be scared to interact with a good medical RPer.
Yeah, it was more a failing on my part. I come from Atlas, where you never do that. You never type anything, and you explain the whole scene with your voice. You find reasons to say things that you might not normally say in, you know, a normal conversation, or just like walking down the street. And like, the real creativity is being able to say those things and describe the scene without typing anything. You say everything. And so when I came to Conan, I was doing the same thing, and there was this tool, this emote system, that I wasn't using. I wasn't using the HUD at all. And so I personally was sort of failing and not practicing it, right? And then it did come out where it was obvious that I should have, because Mina did medical RP, in which, like you just said, she was using the emote system in order to probe a wound, to see if it was infected, to see if to basically learn about it, because it was just a gash to her, right? It was that's all I had said. And I streamed it, obviously, because I only stream RP like I never RP off stream, so I'll stream it, and it's obvious that I'm frustrated in that scene because I don't know enough to provide the emotes, right? Um,
So you mean you
obviously,
don't have the medical background to be like, oh, it's infected, or to say in voice like, oh, it's a little tender in this area, like it looks a little
well,
red to me. Does it look red to you? Type thing.
we couldn't speak. There was another wounded person who was basically dying, and there were several people in the room as well, so we couldn't speak, but she was still giving me RP through emotes, which could not happen in other games. So I wasn't familiar with that, but I think is great. And then also, yeah, I definitely don't know anything about medicine. Like, I know that pus is a thing, and that red, itchy sort of inflameness is a thing, but I'm definitely not a doctor. Like, no way. So
Right, but you're the patient, so you could
yeah,
just be like, oh, I'm feeling this way, or go off your experiences as, I don't know how old you are, but just scraping your knee as a kid, you can be like, oh, it's scabbing over already, or seems extra red or rashy. Just
right.
kind of anything that might prompt a little bit more than just like, oh, we'll clean it and just that's it. And that gives RP to, I think, both of you. And taking from real life experiences, as I said, makes the character feel really organic. So it's not so much just that you have to do research on like what does infection look like. It's just like what has your personal experience been of experiencing something maybe like this. That, I mean, he could have, if he had a gash, he could have just like, I don't know, he was old. He could have fallen down the stairs and got splinters.
Well, unfortunately, I hadn't practiced, and I don't really take it. In my opinion, things that happen in PvE don't matter. If I am learning the game and I go unconscious because I'm stupid, whatever. That doesn't matter. But I think that any player related injury, should be RP'd out because that player is involved, right? So unfortunately, we were it was a gash from one of the conscious Deathclaw, and so I had to RP it, but he one shot me. So it had to be like a big wound, right? And Barry was wearing a dress, all this random stuff, and so like I was very much in a situation where it was outside my depth, and like I've spoken to her about how it went and stuff, and you could see it in the scene where I'm streaming and I'm frustrated, but eventually I stop and I think and say what do I need to provide, where should that be. So I did eventually make it there, but you're right, everyone's right, I should have practiced, that's my bad.
No, I mean, it's whatever your comfort zone is, obviously. And that's my best advice, like I said, is to go off organically, like things you've experienced in real life. Like if you've broken an arm before, that is a feeling that you could like bring into your character. Say you fell down the stairs, which I hear that you've done a lot as Barry. Just say like, oh man, my arm's broken. And then that gives RP to, you'd be like, oh, I think it's broken. And then we can go into the RP of finding out if it is broken. And then you understand how it feels to have that broken arm or that skin knee. So bring in wounds that you might know about, or even wounds that you've seen on TV. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've watched like movies like 300 where like a guy gets a gash across the chest, and just it's just about what you've seen and your personal experience. And don't be scared to just kind of think out of the box and see where the RP leads. You never know where it's going to go.
300.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind. I know.
No, that's good. I like that movie. Shout out to like, I don't know, 2004 or something.
Yeah. Oh no.
So you also said that you lost a patient to rolls. What do you think about the rolling system? Because at this point, I've got 300 hours in this server specifically. I didn't roll a single thing because I never set it up. So how do you feel about the rolling and the systems and when to use it and that sort of thing?
I think it is all individually based on what you prefer as an individual. I personally, growing up on D&D, being a 9-year-old being forced to play D&D, I like to incorporate roles into, like, say, my medical RP, because if I do a crit fail, I won't necessarily be like, I stabbed the person by accident. I'll be like, I dropped the flask on their shirt and it spills everywhere, or I fumble, or I'm nervous. It doesn't necessarily mean like you completely like botch the patient or anything. It's just how you want to interpret that role. I personally use it because I feel like it gives me this more intense feeling of like, am I going to do well in this? Is she going to perform well? It makes it so I don't necessarily always do well. However, I can understand why people who don't use the rolling system or die system might not like it, because it could feel somewhat kind of power gamey. So if I roll well, then they're obligated, they feel, to then respond well to the treatment. And that might not be their goal. Their goal may be to just simply, that's where they perma the character. So I can understand both sides. And I think melding of the two and appreciating the RP that is brought to you while adapting to the other's RP and their way of doing it is very important.
I personally am from games where we describe everything out loud, and you not that they are necessarily good, but it feels good from other RPers when they're fast. The best feeling people to RP with, they have a response immediately, just like this conversation, just like being, at the grocery store and you drop something and the lady next to you is like, oh, let me get that for you, and picks it up for you, like fast, mm-hmm. Right? And the rolling system and the emote system is slow. At least to me.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll wait around and you're like, okay, are they typing? Are they not typing? What's happening?
Yeah. Are there any ways to, to identify when I should be rolling or using the emotes and not dragging the RP down into slowness?
So I think that's, again, personal thing. What I would do with Keily is when I was about to do a treatment, I would sit down with the patient and I'd be like, okay, this is what I found. Here's what I'm going to do step by step. I'm going to clean the wound. I'm going to apply the aloe with the frost lotus. This is how it's going to feel. And I would say it verbally before I even typed it, so that they can start concocting either their response in an emote or verbally. And that's how I would kind of balance it out, so the speed would keep going and it wouldn't interrupt the prompting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Like, that gives me, the person who doesn't, do this time, exactly like you said, but also I did find myself doing that. I would tell someone, oh, I'm gonna do this or whatever, and then I would type that I did it. And I do remember, for example, Amy saying, oh, I'm going to go change. Cool. She walks away and then emotes that she changes, right? That's mm-hmm. There's tons of evidence of that, so that's a great point. Yeah. It's hard to blend all of our different, types of RP, serious and mm-hmm. silly and speedy and slow and thoughtful and all that stuff. It's very difficult. But
I spent 3 months on a written RP server. 3 months when I took a break from voice RP. And it was definitely like, you would do a post, right? They would just call it a post, because it would be like a page, and then you'd wait 10 minutes for somebody else to respond to that scene. So like going out, I remember Sin and I spent some time, like maybe a week, on a written RP server. We'd be like, okay, let's go to the market, and we'd run into someone and it would take an hour to pick up like a bushel of apples from the market, because you're just saying hi to someone and introducing yourself, and it would take an hour of this RP scene. And while it can be really immersive, it can also just be like, I'm tabbing out watching like a YouTube video and not staying in character because it's taking so long to post. So I think there's definitely a balance and adapting to the RP around you.
That, from what I understand, that's good for, people in different time zones and stuff. who are trying to do other things. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never done that sort of thing, but from what I understand, there's a lot of like very slow RP that works for, someone who's awake in an hour when you're about to go to sleep. Perfect. You just set up some RP, they come along, they do it. I don't know. It's just different to me, and maybe I'll try it eventually or something.
I mean, you definitely get longer to think out your responses and stay, I think, even truer to the character. Because if you think about it, there's always going to be an overlap between you and your character. Even actors. I mean, that's why you have actors that have, intertwining chemistry and end up having affairs, because even though they're playing a character, it's still partly an emphasis on themselves. That's why they're good at playing that character, because they can relate. And if you're relating to your character and you react impulsively, sometimes it might not be necessarily what your character would do. So written RP definitely has its benefits, and voice RP definitely has its benefits as well. I think combining them and finding a middle ground is the best. And is what I kind of try to do, at least with a medical RP.
So on that, I met both of your characters. I definitely met the doctor multiple times, and then I wound up hanging out with the chicken for a little bit. And when I don't necessarily know if I recognize your voice right off or not, but I did eventually figure out, hey, this is the same person. Perfect. Okay. It might have been the wings or the eye or something. I don't know. No, anyway, unimportant.
Louissa had an accent.
Okay.
I put an accent for her.
So, I forced you to walk. That's funny. But then when we were over at the medical place or whatever, you were so strong on medicine again, and so such an advocate for it. I initially thought, oh, this is a very similar character, very medical oriented, and then I spent time talking to that character, and I was like, oh, this is definitely not. She learned this from someone else, and is just providing literal RP, like this weird chain. She's just providing it again. Do you have tips for
that?
Go ahead.
Was funny because it was that I had literally Louissa, I had run into Mina and been like, I was burned, can you give me some? I gave her like some medical RP, had some first aid, and she's like, a great doctor used to live here. And she threw back to Keily, my other character, and was like, and she taught the 3 C's. You always clean it, cover it, or clean it, coat it, and cover it. So Louissa had literally just heard that from a doctor. So when she met Barry, she was like, no, you're supposed to clean it, coat it, and cover it. That's what the doctor said. The other doctor said. I remember that interaction, and it was a throwback to Keely's first aid class.
Yeah, it definitely I made a conclusion, hey, this is very similar, and then again, like I said, I learned that they are not similar characters, and also where I'm from and my background, people don't normally play like multiple characters like right back to back. I don't know, maybe they do, but the people I know, we generally stick for, a full season, or as long as we can anyway, as a character and tell the story. But do you have any thoughts and tips about moving into another character and how to keep them separate and unique?
So usually I would agree. I have always been one character, usually for one season. If I end up as another character, it's usually towards the very tail end of the season. It's kind of like an intermediate character, but I still try and make unique and something that I could bring back if I want to. But it's more like, as you say, like just like a throwaway character, kind of like not a gag character. There's definitely depth to Louissa, but she was a were chicken. I mean, it was a very different vibe from Keily. I guess if you can't play a character for the whole season, and develop them and see them grow, playing something completely different that is fun for X amount of time, I guess to keep them different, play the polar opposite. Like Keely didn't like magic. Louissa was a druidic healer, and I'd never done magic healing before, so I kind of wanted to delve into magic healing. I was also Keely was she was a knight in her class, whereas Louissa was, a ranger. So I kind of played the polar opposite of what I thought Keely would be. Um, and I guess that's what kind of separated them. And it did give me a break from Keely because Keely got really intense towards the end. And I guess I usually, as I said, I would play the same character for the whole season, but it just got to a point where I was just like, okay, this is getting a little exhausting, and I need to take a step back and play something that is fun and separate from. So I guess my advice is play a character that may not be as serious and maybe be the polar opposite so you can really separate the two.
And did you do just as much sort of thought and backstory into Louissa that you did into Keely, and
I did more with Louissa, actually.
Okay.
Keely was my throwaway character at the start, believe it or not. She was, I guess I don't know what to be. I guess I'll just be human. And it's like, what am I going to be good at? I guess I'll just sort of do mundane healing, and no one's going to come to my clinic because there's all these magical beings in the world that can just like heal with miracle magic. Or like, what am I going to do? Here's a Band-Aid and a lollipop. Like, that was kind of Keely starting out. And originally I didn't even say like I'm a doctor. Like when I would introduce myself, I'd be like, I'm from Hunter Song. I'm a monster hunter. She was a monster hunter apprentice, but in the medical branch of the Monster Hunter Guild, which we made up, she was established. So she would be like, I'm kind of a doctor. I do doctory things, but I don't do any magic. So if you need magic healing or you prefer it, don't come to my clinic. But then people just started being like, oh, you're a doctor. And I ended up like healing a priestess, restoring her faith. Like Keely did all sorts of things that were just out of her realm sometimes, where I was like, I would literally be like, I don't know what to do with this. Like I had to tell a guy that he was an undead, like he was dead. Like I was like, according to my examination, you are dead. Like, how do you tell someone that they are undead? So Keely was put into some weird situations that, again, I thank the community and the admins for making Keely the way she was. She was my human throwaway character of average, like, just mediocrity. Like, she just wasn't good at much of anything, and she ended up just developing into this great character
that everyone knew and everyone told everyone else about constantly.
See, I didn't see that part. I would just see like all of a sudden the flood of people. I didn't hear like everybody being like, "Oh, go to the doctor. Who's the doctor?" I would have people come and be like, "You're the doctor." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's me." I didn't know who was talking about what and what was being said. So that was really interesting for me.
Yep. Definitely. Anything that involved Deathclaw, from when I started all the way through, they would say, oh yeah, we learned about this during the research at Hunter Song with the doctor. Like it was very often someone saying this character and this place next to Clear Shore over and over and over and over and over. And then, I was recognizing that there were times when people were referencing the Hunter Song clinic and research place without ever even saying it. Hey, we did research, or at the institute, things like that. It was very much everywhere in the world and very well known. And you mentioned the community and the admins and those people basically making your character blossom, right? Grow and be incredible, like you said. What do you think our responsibility is? What is the level of responsibility that we have as players in a community to show respect and gratitude to people who are putting their time and effort into a character, just like we are? And how do we show those things?
I think the first step is the moment you think you're having a great interaction, before you either leave that interaction or right after you leave that scene, go into RP accommodations and be like, wow, whether it was a negative interaction or a positive interaction, if it got a reaction from you out of character or even major character develop or, lose focus or anything, just be like, right in that moment, definitely give them a compliment because everyone loves compliments. I don't care who you are, hearing like even, Amy bringing the pug in. I loved that interaction. And immediately, I think I did the RP accommodation. Sometimes it got really busy. But, just in that moment, if you're having a great RP interaction, acknowledge it. Either do an RP accommodations if you're not comfortable DMing that person or you feel like that person, doesn't really want to accept DMs. I tend to be introverted in real life and really extroverted online for some reason. So I will just like DM that person usually and be like, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that, RP interaction. But I also think it's good for the community to see. So making it on a public forum, such as the RP accommodations, that's what it's there for. And I think the responsibility is to just take that moment to just be like, your character really impacted mine and also made me have a reaction out of character. It's like leaving a review for a great movie. You're building this story in real time with someone. So just giving them acknowledgement goes a long way.
I agree, and that is a thing I've talked about to a ton of people. Showing respect and telling people, I really appreciate this interaction and stuff. However, I have also, because that channel has never existed in anywhere I've been, it's always, you have to do it by DM or just say it in some random channel. That channel also has a ton of meta, because I think people want to talk about not only how great it was, but they want to talk about the story even more, and they want to relive it, relive that memory. And I know you said you write down a bunch of stuff. You think there are other ways that we can have the memories and relive the memories with each other, but not necessarily blast meta hardcore in a channel?
Screenshots go a long way. I will say though, like for instance, the screenshot that's up on the screen right now with the Deathclaw, I actually didn't post that till after I put my report out publicly because I didn't want there to be meta with that there was literally a thespian Deathclaw body in the clinic, right? So I didn't put that out there, and I put it under spoiler so that, people would be like, it would be, a spoiler. So screenshots can also, they say, a picture, speaks 1,000 words. So taking a screenshot just of that moment, either for yourself or for the other person, and just tagging them in it. There's a lot of times where I would take like 3 or 4 screenshots of a scene. I remember Aro, who plays Katya, was getting an enchanted ring. My character wasn't involved in it at all. I was just in the room for moral support, I guess. And her and Valmora was doing the spell, and I just took like 5 screenshots, and I posted like 2 in the screenshot channel and then sent it to them personally so that they could remember that scene, in that moment. I think screenshots go a long way, and I've become addicted to taking screenshots.
So do I. Me as well. Even though I stream everything. Like, why would I need to, right? I can make a whole clip, but I take a ton of screenshots because later on, I'm gonna look for something and see that screenshot and go, oh yeah, freaking, that was good.
And there's even times where other people take screenshots, and I'll look back like 2 seasons after, and I'll be like, oh my god, look, I'm in that screenshot. I was there for that moment, and it just, it brings back, like, even if I wasn't involved directly with that moment, I'm just like, I was there. Look at me in the background. I'm that little dot, So it just brings back fond memories for a lot of people that are there.
Yeah. See? Everyone. And there's a lot of people that I ask for screenshots to do these things. And they're like, oh, I really only have this one. And I'm like, come on, you got a couple more, please. Throughout the season, character growth, any of that stuff. Yeah.
I try and take a lot, but I'll be honest, I don't save them to my computer. I end up sending them to other people. So when you ask me for screenshots, I had to like go through the screenshot channel or like ask my boyfriend, be like, do you remember the screenshots I sent you or that you took? Can we go through them? Because I need them. Like I don't save them. I don't have like an organized folder. I'm very chaotic in real life. So like, it's just like, oh, I think I sent a screenshot over here to this person that I like, so I'll have to go through the conversation. But you know,
Talking about it. Let me pull this up. Just I guess if you don't mind, I'll show mine real quick. Just the way it works. It's this button, I think. All right, so you can't really tell. Let's see if I can get these. Boom. These are my screenshots, and they are organized by like server, right? So, this is a character I played. This is another character. These are costumes. This is when we did D&D. Like, there's all these different little subsets of them, and I have all sorts of screenshots, and I could just like, go look at them. And I suggest that to other people because, these are not people that, like, these are my friends, but I didn't play either of those characters. I'm the one in the back, right? And it's funny to show them, and I've definitely recommended to other people and stuff all the time.
Yeah, I definitely did that the other day. I know the Sasquatch who played Gowning is in this chat right now, and I know that I sent him a throwback picture as well as like Arcadius of just like Keely was going to get married, and she made a matching outfit for Gowning to walk her down the aisle, and I took a screenshot of like them together, even though we never had the wedding and he never got to walk down the aisle. I sent it to him the other day. I was like, throwback to this. And I did the same thing with Kitty, who played Mocha. I was like, do you remember when, And so I feel like people appreciate that too, because it brings back a happy memory your characters had together. Like, even if it ended poorly between your characters, it was like, do you remember when he almost walked her down the aisle, So I think screenshots are very important if you don't want to do RP accommodations and have that meta of, oh, we enchanted your ring and it was an awesome scene and I can't believe in like this huge thing, having that screenshot where people are like, that looks interesting. What's going on there,
Speaking of the wedding, that's actually something that you did that I don't agree with. But obviously there was a lot going on. Why did the wedding not occur?
So, okay, the wedding did not occur because although we knew Keily that there wasn't going to be a deathball attack, right? In character, it seemed like it just didn't make sense for them to be like, yeah, I just had a meeting with the war chief, but let's get married. It seems safe enough, And then on top of that, Keily, there was some conflict with scheduling where I didn't want some people having to choose between one wedding or another. There's another wedding on the same day. And I also found that out in character too. So that was another reason. And so that's one of the reasons it didn't happen. Though we had like games planned, like we were going to do musical chairs where it was like, if you sit on the bad chair, it's a bomb and then you're out. We had events planned, and it was definitely something I think I regret not doing in the season, not going through with it. It was one of my regrets, as well as I think Citizens, who played Elric. He gets on me a lot of like, we should have just gone through with the wedding, So that's one of my regrets that I can agree to.
I'm a person who does events. It is something I very much enjoy. And I specifically plan events when other people will plan events. And there's a huge list of reasons for me personally, but it seemed very ridiculous that someone would cancel their wedding because there was another wedding. And we talked about that in character. But we did also discuss like, hey, there's a bunch of explosions and junk, every time a bunch of people get together. So that 100% I agree with, keeping it real, to characters. Yeah. But I will say to anyone who's like, oh, 2 events at the same time, this server is not normal Conan anymore. Like, there are too many people. It's not what I have seen to be normal Conan. And when there's 60 people who are going to log in, they can't all go to a wedding. It doesn't make sense. They don't even know that person. They're not going to want to go or whatever, right? You know? So I normally plan events that aren't necessary for the story, you know. So like there's a fashion show going on, and anyone who doesn't need to be at the wedding, doesn't know those people, they still have a chance to go to another event. And if there are two weddings, fine, you have the RP of not being able to go to one of them, and you know, seeing them afterwards and complaining and, you know, giving them gifts and like all that stuff. I think that two weddings at the same time is wonderful, personally.
Right. No, I definitely see that perspective. And as I said, it's something that I regret not doing in the season, but it also, we talked about it both in character and out of character. Does it make sense for our characters who, and to be fair, Keely was, as you said, very popular. Everyone knew the doctor. Did it make sense for her to have a wedding knowing that all of her friends and you know, people she cared about in one area, after she had just gotten done with a meeting with the commander and fought that whole Thursday for 4 hours to keep her safe? Does that make sense to be like, hey guys, you know, I know you just, you know, fought hours for me, but let's come play musical chairs? You know, it was very I don't know, I didn't want to break the immersion of the seriousness of,
Right.
of what was going on.
Yeah. In character, like the planning and all that stuff, we walk through the space. We talked about where people might stand, and I had no real intention to go to that wedding.
Oh, you saw the venue that I built?
Yeah, we, like, people just walked down the path and we looked at it and stuff. There were 3 or 4 of us, and I know that probably a lot of people did that, where they because I mean, that river is really easy to get, you know, from one side to the other, because there's nothing really in your way. You know, you don't have to go around anything. So
And it was on the Hunter song, so it was like right there.
right, yeah. And you know, we stood there, we talked about, oh, they're probably gonna stand here, and like, this is a beautiful space, and I like, you know, the benches or whatever it was, and the little path to get there and all that stuff. We talked about it, right? And then it didn't happen, which is also RP. You know, we didn't get to go, and we didn't.
Whoa! Holy snap! Thank you so much.
We didn't get to be involved. We didn't get to choose whether we wanted to go or not. So, I mean, that's still RP, and I still approve of your choice and all that stuff. I just wanted to make the point to, you know, my personal feelings, and then also get yours.
Yeah. It made sense, but it was also a regret.
Yeah.
And I, Sin's never done a wedding RP, so it would have been interesting RP that we've never experienced before. So, which brings me into my next point of Keely was actually, I don't know if you knew, for like half the season that I had Keely, she was pregnant, which is why she didn't fight or wasn't in. Her RP was very limited, and that was RP I had never done before. And only, I would say, the last like 2 weeks, like when Dudes broke and the server was down for a couple of days, we RP'd that she went back home and gave birth. It was in character stories, and then she came back for her assignment, and that they would travel there when we were offline. You know, basically they would travel there to be with the child, and that's how we RP'd it, so that she was out of the land. The child was, but it was very interesting RP in the sense that it very much limited me a lot, because although I was having these great interactions with the Deathclaw, I couldn't be a combative. Like, I had to be the passive, you know, please don't kill me, you know. You know, and although I knew nothing was going to happen because of the rules of the server when it comes to pregnancy, I still had to value my life and that child's life. So it was it was a very interesting dynamic that I don't know if I would do again, to be honest.
This seems sort of clear and obvious at this point, but in that realism, what do you think the balance should be between realism and playing a game where you can be a hero and, play things and all that stuff?
I think it's, again, just personal preference. And I think that others have to respect the other RPers in the community for their personal preference. I know that there was other pregnancies on the server, and in fact, Keily was involved greatly in one of them where she was actually, I got great RP from it. I was providing prenatal RP care for this child, and it was a magical child. So then I had to make these vials that I would deliver every day that were infused with earth magic from another person. So it provided them RP, and it was just it. I think you just need to be open to the RP and let it happen, and then adapt to it as best you can. And of course, if you're not comfortable with it, then definitely step away from it. But if you're open to it and you think it can provide RP, then definitely take yourself up. And to be fair, those people that I did that RP for, like the prenatal care, they contacted me OOCly to be like, hey, would you be interested in Constable? And that was before they asked me in character. So it didn't put me on the spot, because we know that, pregnancy RP, and things like that can be very just polar opposites of, like, people for it, people not for it, and how it should work out. And it can be a very sensitive subject. So I think it's personal RP that you should keep as personal as possible until the people around you are comfortable with it and that they're comfortable with it.
Speaking of, I forgot the disclaimer at the beginning. Dang it. You're very much welcome to not answer anything you don't want to answer, for sure.
Yeah.
Or, avoid any of that stuff. Totally cool. And also, on the topic of maybe, some people cool, some people not cool kind of thing, if you would like to provide your thoughts and experiences or any of that stuff, what's it like to be female in RP?
Whew. In RP
okay.
or Keily? Like,
well, sure. Both, I guess. I guess I can also ask what's it like to be female on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, so in the RP community, I've had great experiences, and I've also had some very sour ones. And I think that is based on being female. But I think men can have the same kind of experiences. So I don't think it's limited to just female or men. I think just being an RPer in general, and although the RP community, I like to think, is a great community, it is a small community, and you definitely can get a quote unquote reputation, and sometimes people don't want to give you the benefit of the doubt of growing as a person or growing as an RPer. Like they're can be very static in their opinions, and I think people need to learn to be like, you know what, maybe I didn't have the best interaction with them at this time or place, but maybe it's different now. Maybe they've changed, because people do change and they grow as both an RPer and as a person. And I think everyone needs to be given the benefit of the doubt. Like new life rule, both in game and out of game. You start a new season, start clean slate. And that's my opinion.
That covers my question about, presence on Discord and presence in streams and stuff like that affecting RP. So I appreciate that answer as well. That's a question I normally ask, I guess, just because, of course, we exist, in streams. We're in one right now, and we exist on Discord all the time. So, people can bring conclusions about people to the next season and everything. So I appreciate those thoughts. That I can. I'll just ask something completely different.
Okay.
How do you feel about the admin-led story with, the admin power behind it? And have you ever played on servers that don't have that story thing?
Yes, I've played on servers that both have had admin-led story arcs, have been in the middle, and have been completely, like, free range. Free range is, in my opinion, great for creativity, but there's only so much you can go when it comes to personal RP. Only so many times your character can go through a change or without, because if you think of from a writing standpoint, when you look at books, you have inner conflict and outer conflict of the character and what motivates them. And so I think, to answer your question, is that I really enjoyed having the structure of having a common goal to not only bring the characters together that normally would not go together. Like, why would a monster hunter that specializes in vampires fight alongside a vampire? Because we always said, like, in character, the enemy of my enemy is my friend for now. And that's how we kind of role played it. And it was a very interesting dynamic. And we ended up actually caring for these creatures that we were meant to hunt because we had a common goal. And I think having the admin-led story allowed people to come together or decide to elect to not be in the story or be in the story, and you still have the option to be part of it or not be part of it. But if you do become part of it, it definitely ups the intensity and the interactions and dynamics you have with other characters. So I very much appreciated it. And I think it was done in a pretty good balance. From what I understand, like I mentioned the wedding, I knew Oosili wouldn't have been attacked, but in character, I didn't know that. I know that a lot of events that were attacked were already agreed upon to be attacked, if that makes sense. So it was something that the admins did a good balance of, do you want us to intervene in this event? Do you want us to be part of it in the overarching story? I think they had a good balance of it, and I appreciated it very much. It definitely motivates my character in different ways and adds more conflict and dynamics. So I guess in freelance you get more creativity, but I think that it limits your character dynamics a lot.
So you didn't play her all the way through, but you think that there would have been strife between your monster hunter after the battle was over and it was clear that there was no fight? And do you think that there were people who just completely lost the ability to do that because so many people ended their stories as soon as the fight was over?
Mm-hmm. I think, sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit for some reason. I think when it comes to me personally with Keily, Keily left for multiple reasons. One being that the friend she thought she had, which was a demon, and two vampiresses, who she considered her best friends at the time, had tried to kill her. So if she would have stayed and fought alongside them, even if the battle had ended, there still would have been this weird, either they would have had to talk it out and it would have been really intense and interesting RP, or they would have carried on that grudge. And as it stands now, because she left, the grudge was carried on, which I've talked to the people involved, and it will carry on to her offspring as well, probably. So that's an interesting dynamic. I think when it comes to, I guess, the basis of the question of, do you think you'd be all friendly to everybody? I think that fighting alongside someone you consider an enemy and having them defend you and like pick you up in battle definitely changes the dynamic of the characters, for sure. There's people that Keely definitely respected, that she wanted to have respected when she first came to the lands. And that is good for the character growth. And I think you just kind of ride out the RP as best you can. For instance, like Mina and her, when they first met, Mina was yelling at her because Keely didn't want to interrupt a conversation that they were having with someone to say hi. And then she was like, oh, you looked busy, and I was busy. And then Mina was like, oh, we're just so busy. It was not a good first impression. And then Keely ended up making Mina like her second. So I think the dynamics definitely shift. And I think it's a good thing, and you just adapt as your character grows.
speaking of the interruption of saying hey or whatever, there are very obvious patterns, and I call them scripts, but there's a definite pattern into tons of interactions that occur in RP where, for example, you roll up into a group of 3 or 4 people standing around. They do this interaction thing where they tell you who they are and introduce, and like you stand in a circle and then you get a tour, and then if it's been about an hour, then someone finds a reason to leave because they're bored. Do you have any thoughts about how to get out of those patterns and scripts and make things more unique and vibrant?
Come in for a reason. Come in with a dynamic. We had interactions where Sin has said in the chat, where for the longest time the vampires were trying to make the clinic a blood bank, and so initially they knew we were monster hunters, but we had Katya and Hazelmere bring up a knocked out thrall and say, "We've brought you a donation for blood. Can you take this?" And that was such a unique way to introduce them to the monster hunters that led to such a tense, introduction that was just so, it was more than just standing and sort of like, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so's sister." It was just very much like, "We're here to give you this donation of blood." And it is monster hunters just standing there like, "What the? You can't do that here. Like, what's wrong with you?" And they're like, "Well, I guess we'll just let it go." So, and then it just led to this immense just intensity every time they met. And then the dynamic grew from there, where Keely ended up calling them her best friends because pathetically, she thought she didn't have any friends as popular as she was.
Right. Also, I guess, side point, definitely everyone should try and do impressions of everyone else's character, because that's great. I did it a couple times in character, but even out of character, it's so good. I recommend that to everyone. Yeah, and I don't know who Tank played, Tankanowski there, but
Tank was Varys.
What?
Varys. He was Scarlet Kiss. He was a Lycan, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So he came to me. He's speaking of when he came to Keely and asked for a certificate to be made so he could be an emotional support animal, a service dog. I legit made a certificate in game, a scroll and everything. And it was that's also an interesting, like, people would come to me with the most crazy things that I was just like, that was a great interaction, a great way to really introduce yourself and almost endear them, or definitely set the mood. And I think, back to your question of how do you get from, "Oh, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so," it's just be like, what are, like, for instance, if you're playing a demon and you come across an angel, be like, "Ugh," like, you don't even have to introduce yourself, just walk by and be like, "Ugh," just, make a sound and then have that person react to you, rather than being like, "Oh, hello, I'm a demon, what are you?" Very static. So
yeah, the thought I had a couple interviews ago, or at some point, was that the best characters are the players that have a belief, like a very strong belief in their character. And it sounds like you play this character of Keely, but you also you worked at it, you thought about it, and each time you created an anchor into the world, she became more real. And would you agree that there's this power behind making them real and making them believable, so that other people don't have to follow the script and they can say, "My character is part wolf, part or full vampire," or whatever. And so when they come, they like the belief in your character allows them to provide their own character way more than someone who's like, oh, I don't really know what my character is, so I'm just going to introduce myself. Do you think that's correct?
I think that's correct too, because like I said, when I made Keily, it was very much like, oh, I guess I'll just be human and not good at anything, and no one's going to come to my clinic because I'm not going to be a miracle worker. I'll just be like, rub some frost lotus on it, you know? So I think it's definitely, it can go both ways. You know, it depends on how in tune with your character you are when you quote unquote roll in, and how much they developed since then. So like if you base a character and you're like, oh, I just want a character that looks like this, but I don't know why, maybe come up with a little bit of a backstory. Be like, I like when I make a character that makes them feel more real and how they might interact is their flaws. Like as I said, Keely was mundane, average. She had severe self-esteem issues, even though she made all these great leaps in the community and she was well known and people think she was a great doctor. She just never believed in herself. And it didn't matter what she achieved or what she did. She always had to do more and more and more and more and more. And I think that just propelled her further, but I still kept on to that flaw. So I think that to make it organic and your interactions with people organic is base your character on a flaw. I think that's important. Be like, oh, they're hot-headed. So like maybe they come into a conversation and be like, were you talking about me? He's like, no, I was talking to so-and-so. I was like, oh, I thought you were saying that my shoes were funny or something, you know.
Yeah.
Just, you know, make it less static. But if you want to develop your character, it's okay to introduce to other characters in a static way and be like, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so place. And then depending on that character's reaction to your character, you can go from there and play off other people. You know, it's very much, RP is very improv-y theater, I guess, which is weird because I never had the confidence to be in theater, so.
Your point about, you know, I guess taking things and going with them, but also, you know, sharing that with other people. I hang with a crew, you know, just like a lot of people do, and you know, we occasionally wind up all RPing together. But Preceptor played this character that I think I only met once or twice maybe, and you know, he sort of created the character. I have no idea what it was about. It doesn't matter to, you know, me. He's my friend, but he rolled through and said some junk, and you know, it was a normal interaction. And then he took his shoes off or something, and because of the way the game was on Atlas, his character had small feet, and that thing that we made a joke about it, right? Like, you got small feet, whatever. But that propelled me to look at every other character in a new way, because I had never even thought about, you know, how the models were forced into the way they were. So we look at his feet, he's got small feet. I look at my own character's feet. I look at female feet. I'm like looking at boots and like how the boots look different and all this stuff. And I still do that now. Like, for some reason, it was like a detail that made the world much more interesting and unique. And I think that you did that over and over and over and over with both of your characters, honestly. There were a lot of characters that had two-tone eyes. I can't remember the term for it. But yours... What'd you say?
Starts with an H. I know what you're talking about, though. Go on.
Yeah. Something chroma or something like that. I don't know. Polychroma, maybe? Anyway. I have no idea. But, your second character, Louissa, heterochromia. Oh!
Yeah, that's what it is.
She has, like, a very unique second eye or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
so there's a story behind that.
Yeah? What is that?
So, just like Keely, how, I don't know if you were aware, Keely's eyes were like indigo, and then when she was pregnant, they were a fiery amber. I like to manifest things that are going on with the character to be physical so that people can comment on it. So with Louissa, her background was that she was wild magic, and basically, long story short, she was trying to save some people and ended up killing the people and almost killing herself with trying to protect them. And she got this injury over her eye, which basically, if you think of eyes like the windows to the soul, it was, I believe her eye was orange, if I'm not mistaken, with Louissa.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, it was bright orange, and then her other eye was like a dark brown. And it was basically to show that she went through something traumatic that changed her outer surface. There was a reason for it. Like her magic was very bright and wasn't hidden behind the quote unquote vessel of a body on that particular area. So it goes back to building my characters on flaws. Louisa also had a scar over that eye. I believe it was her right side, her right eye, or her left eye. I'm not sure, but
I think it's right too. It's this side, yeah.
Yeah, so she had a scar from the actual background, and then the eye damage to it as well. And I made it so she couldn't see out of that eye very well either. Instead of seeing like regular people or shapes, she would see like auras from that eye. Was the idea behind it? It was magically inclined.
Yeah, I think that detail is super in depth. Obviously, you tied it into the story and all that stuff. After I saw her eye, because I don't know much about Conan, I don't know what color Barry's eyes are at all, but I did look at other people's eyes from there, and of course, when they're glowing because they're in the dark or whatever. That's one thing, but Nala has two colors of eyes that I had noticed previously, but never really thought about. Like, sure, there's one character, and then I start looking at more and more characters and looking at their eye colors and really trying to like figure out if there was something behind it. And even Sandian said that he would move into different types, like he would make it glow if something was happening or not. And like, those details are amazing. Obviously, I didn't ask the chicken woman about her eye. Do you have any tips for us to get into the deeper stories and the backstories of the details that we should be asking about, but I just don't?
Well, if you notice it, ask. If it seems strange to you, it might seem strange to your character. Be like, with Keely's eyes, people notice immediately that her eyes were different before she even started showing or even told anyone that she was pregnant, right? They're like, what's up with your eyes, right?
Yeah.
And I remember a scene where I was emoting in the vicinity of people, but they wouldn't directly see my character. And I remember, I think it was Katya, Hazelmere, and Arcadius in Hunterstown. They were standing in the middle, and I was out tending the garden behind my house. I think you remember the setup, how it was. There was a garden in the back. So they couldn't directly see my character, but they were in emote range. And my character was having like this meltdown about how she was catching things on fire without being able to control it, hence her eyes. And so, like, although they were aware of it, they couldn't react to it. And I think that was also kind of a neat thing where she had to like run and put her hands out in the river. And then she came around Hunter Song and she was clearly upset. And they're like, why are you so upset? And they had to pretend they didn't see my emotes of why she was upset. But, Katya was one of the first ones to pick up on the fact that Keely's eyes had changed. She pulled her aside and was like, what's going on with your eyes? And Keely tried to deny it. Like, I even rolled like disguise or something and crit failed. And I was like, I'm pregnant. Just like, yeah. So I think if you notice a detail to a character, definitely point it out. Even if they wear like certain things, like maybe they wear certain colors, like Keely very much loved blues. And then when she was pregnant, she went to reds. There's certain nuances to characters. Like Keely had a lot of freckles, and a lot of people would comment, like, would notice these sort of details. And if you comment on them, it really shows not only the appreciation for the character creation and the RPer, but also can bring forth a lot of RP to you in regards to getting to know that character.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's not something I normally do, and I'm envious of that sort of that depth of the conversations that you've clearly had with these people that you saw and hung out with, in character. And I think that emoting outside of someone's visual range is, I don't know, unique and different. I've long talked about the ways people make their scenes realistic in the fact that I use the same example all the time. Louisa is this amazing RPer, and I used to walk by her workshop and hear her singing to herself or humming. And like, obviously I'm outside the building. I have no idea what she's doing, but just walking through a town and there's like a scene you can walk into where someone's just living their life. That's amazing. Do you have any other tips for providing that realism through action and emo, or even your voice?
Yeah, I mean, I would emote whether there's people around that would react to it or not, because that was my personal character development. It was kind of like me writing the story. Like Louisa, she would recharge through connection with the earth. So I would do like she whispers a prayer under her breath, and someone could have been like, "What did you say?" Like they could have questioned her on it. They never did. And then I would also do it in voice too, where I'd be like, she prayed to Sylvanas, which was god of basically nature and D&D style. And so, I think adding, like, say you're a new character and you walk into Clearshore, and for the very first time you're on this land. Say you've been on a ship for so long, your character has, and immediately the first thing your character does, and if there's people around you, is kneel on the ground and touch the earth and put it in your hands and just like emote that you put it in your hands and then say in voice, like, you're not interacting with someone, but you're interacting like with yourself and your environment of, oh, I'm so glad to see land again. I'm here. I can finally start my life. And then people can decide if they want to interact with you, and that could be your introduction. And I think that is a really unique way of just telling your story and also allowing people to take part of it. Because at any point in Keely burning her lotus like garden, could someone be like, perception roll or however they wanted to do it, because I was offering that RP, be like, I smell something burning, do you? And then interact with me that way. They chose not to interact, but they sent me messages out of character like, what the heck? So I think it's just a matter of what you decide you want to put forth into the world and have people decide if they want to interact with it or not.
Peeling lemons? Nice.
Yeah. Hazelmere, they always complained that the clinic smelled too much like aloe for Keely. So she put lemon trees around everywhere because Hazelmere really liked lemon trees, and she would steal her lemons. So that was like interesting quirks. And,
adorable.
And, yeah, there's one time they went through my blood vials and they left a note saying that they cracked a blood vial and swept it under the rug and all this stuff, and I had to like RP by myself cleaning it up. Like I did RP cleaning it up.
Right.
And then like it was like, does my character mention it to him? Would she know it's them? Like she didn't know it was them, but she was like, someone went through my stuff, mixed everything up, and there was a mess. And then Hazelmere and Katya was like, probably raccoons, like it's
yeah.
It's all about what you want to put out and make unique and have people react to.
Yeah, I did the same thing with Barry. Since it's something that I've recognized in other people, I try to do that more and more often. So I would walk around the treehouse and do the chores that I was assigned, because I refused to play the game, and Nelly didn't know what to do with that. And like he really was retired, and it didn't fit. So like it was so different that she finally figured out that it didn't make like she couldn't ask of Barry what she would ask of other people. So instead, he was assigned chores, and I would walk around and change the flowers and throw the sheets out the window and you know, very, very lazily do that stuff. And then I could tell people that I did it later, just like you said.
Yeah, and then they could decide how they want to interact with it and be like, oh, are you going to come do my sheets? Or I'll hire you to do this. And then he could just be like, I'm retired. And no, it leaves unique interactions, I think. So always building your personal story while leaving it open to other people's involvement is good. Like I would always do interactions where I felt like people could involve themselves if they felt like they wanted to.
Right.
Or ask a question of what was going on.
Right. So. Just to be a nerd very quickly, and I'd like to point out Sylvanas burned Darnassus to the ground, just for the record. You know, she might be your person's whatever, but...
Yeah, it's a name, but totally different. Mine is the father of nature, you know.
Right, but, yeah, of course.
Sylvanas
yeah.
Made all the elves cry, I get it.
Life for the queen. All right, nice. On realism, and you said limitations a bunch of times. How do you feel about gear and stats and all of that stuff?
So gear and stats I like because on one hand, if for instance, Hunter Song was meant to be kind of an in-tag group. You know, we knew going in that we were rolling into a server which had a plethora of vampires. And we built our characters to not like vampires. Like, Elric's whole backstory was his family was slaughtered by vampires. So why would, you know... So on one hand, I was like, oh, we got to get geared as quick as possible because if we have any kind of conflict, we got to be able to defend ourselves. And then it's also, on the other hand, we also had to balance the tension so that it wasn't like the whole server came for two people, which was my worry. And we ended up turning into a hub of information. But the original idea was that we were going to be antaggy. But when it comes to gear and things, I think what is realistic to your character. For instance, if Barry, as far as I understand, was retired, he didn't wear the gear. He probably had the gear, was able to get the gear. But why would he wear it? Like, he had no reason to like be heavily armored. Whereas, like, Keily had a reason to be heavily armored. She had a reason to wear some of the things she wore, like her surgeon outfit. When it comes to mid-maxing, as they say, I'm not really into it in the sense, like, Keily never carried a quiver that they had because she wasn't a bowman. She carried a shield and a one-handed axe. And it wasn't even the best one-handed axe you could get. It was just what she preferred because she was like, I like wielding it like a sword, you know. So I stood true to the character while still finding a middle ground of being able to defend myself if needed. And I think that's important to remember, that you play true to your character, you know. Even if you don't get the advantage in battle, you know, losing can sometimes lead to more RP than winning. And people need to get out of the mentality of, I have to win all the time.
Yes. I don't know enough about Conan, but I'm pretty sure. You think that it makes sense for anyone in the environment to actually have gear of some sort because there's a snake that can bite you in half, or a bunch of spiders, or whatever those rock nose things are called. Would you say that that makes basically an argument just for existing, you know, to have gear?
Kind of not. I think that Conan is based on a very dangerous time and terrain. So yes, making sure that your character is able to withstand the elements, for instance, survive on their own, should be something that it goes into valuing your life, in my opinion, for RP. So I think it's important that there is gear, but there's a middle ground of what is to be acceptable to your character and their distinct fighting or defense style. Like, if Barry didn't want to fight or wasn't good at it, sure, don't have a weapon. Have a walking stick. Be like, oh, this staff, this is just my fancy walking stick. Or be like, yeah, I wear some armor, but not all of it because I want to make sure that I'm warm. Like when Keely would go up to the north, she would wear her furs. Like I would have my furs in my inventory. I would kind of change so it was like kind of immersive. So I would take off like, my helmet and things like that. Just so that I was immersive with the character and it felt right for the character. When it comes to, like I said, min-maxing, it's just I don't appreciate it as much. Like, for instance, I played a season with like Vikings. Like, why would a Viking use a jousting on a horse, for instance, just to get the advantage in battle on horseback? They would use their shield and axe or sword or whatever they had. So stay true to the character, and I think you'll have more fun that way, even if you lose.
Can you attack from mounts?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Now I know. Amazing. I would say that even though you played a doctor, sure, and you have a medical background, sure, you are a Conan doctor also, so I appreciate all your like insights into the actual game and thoughts about the game and stuff like that.
I'm actually like you. I don't know. I've always rolled into groups and whatnot or had a partner. So when it comes to like starting up, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. Like if LL didn't have the starting bundle of how to building immersive, place, I'd be like, how do I get hearted brick? I would just give up because I wouldn't even know how to make the stations to make the thing. And I would get frustrated. I'd be like, I need this to make this, but I need this first to make that. I don't, like I would get so frustrated. You can ask Sin, like it would be bad and he'd have to walk me through and I hated it. Like I don't actually play the game. I just RP in an immersive way.
That rings true to me. I'm the same way, of course, as you know. Yeah, now it sounds like you're a pro, even if the beginning stuff is kind of I do think that you're a wealth of knowledge, RP wise for sure, but also about the game and stuff. So I like I said, I appreciate that, and that's definitely all my questions. I think. And do you have any thoughts you'd like to share with the community or with Coded or new players or any of that stuff?
I don't think so. I think the only parting thought I want to give is that kind of touching on a topic we touched on before is give everyone the benefit of the doubt and give them a new life rule because that can happen in real life too. Things change, people go through things, sometimes their reactions you might think are, something that's affecting you. And this goes for me as well, where I can be affected by RP. And I think that's what draws us to RP because it can affect us, But just keep in mind that they're real people and they have their own things going on. And just give them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying their best. And, maybe try and get to know them if you want, or if you feel like you're just not going to get along with them, just do your best, not necessarily to outright like ignore or avoid them, but just tolerate them. Be tolerant, just adapt and just be like a duck and let the water roll off your back.
Two wise men said it best: be excellent to each other. Of course, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that we should try our best and assume and believe that other people are as well. And if we do, then it's an amazing community, Yeah.
I think so too. And no matter bad blood, sometimes I can be really impulsive with my emotions. So just take a night, let it simmer, let it cool down, and then revisit it. Walk away, just take a break. And I need to remind myself in that too. And that's why I end up not playing Keily through the whole season because I just needed to. It was a lot of intensity, a lot of work. I sunk hours into a lot of OOC like research and stuff. I think a lot of people think it was very easy for me to just be like, oh, pop, there's a a report. It was just because I had the availability because I'm not working, and I would do it right then and there. But it was a lot of work. It was more so get the approval for the situation, kind of go over what I might find, write what I might find after I do the research on what I found, get that approved, then publish it. And so there's a lot of steps to it that I think people misunderstood, that like they think I just kind of whipped it out and there was like it's a lot of hard work sometimes. And I think you just need to step back and breathe sometimes and just remember, take care of yourself first and believe the best in other people and just be a community.
While I do advocate breaks for sure, definitely I think even though people say like, hey, we don't really understand how much time you put into things, I think that the environments you created, the scenes you created, and everything you provided showed how much you care, and maybe not how much that you put into it, but I think we all really understood, this is good, like this is amazing stuff that you're providing. And of course we said over and over, your character wound up being so impactful to so many people, in depth in so many stories, and in the server story as well. So I hope that you would understand and believe that we all really, really, really appreciate everything you gave throughout the whole season, for sure.
I'm glad, because it was a lot of work and it did get to me sometimes, but I definitely, like I said at the beginning, was afforded an opportunity that I was so thankful for. I was so happy to be part of, and it really allowed my creativity and my ability to be impactful and provide that RP. And that was my goal. Like, it was not just about my character. It was about the other characters that I could be like, hey, go get me this, go investigate this, go do this. Like, I was almost like an NPC giving quests, and then giving them a reward at the end of like, here's the credits, here's what you found, this is your breakthrough, and I very much enjoyed that opportunity, and I loved it and would love to do it all over again. If I was given the choice, I would do it 100 times over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Thank you very much for being here and being you. Also, yeah. Thanks, Nightbot. I'm going to, I guess, take a short break as advocated by my doctor.